Welcome back to War With the News. This week, the big news that happened was some battle rating and repair cost changes, and a whole lot of them, but not too much, as I will cover each individual change. But be sure to hit that subscribe button, because some of these changes are really interesting, and even some of them might be leaning toward what we could see in the future. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go from the lowest original battle rating to the highest original battle rating, starting with tanks, then planes, then boats, and helicopters are mixed in with planes. And there should be timestamps for each individual nation in the pinned comment below. So starting with the US tanks, the M4A1 76W was moved for arcade from 5.0 to 5.3 and for realistic 4.7 to 5.0. The M4A2 76W was also moved for arcade from 5.0 to 5.3, and the M4A3 76W was moved for arcade from 5.3 to 5.7 and for realistic from 5.3 to 5.7, and that's the same with the Chinese and Russian one. The M18, this is the first one that kind of struck me, was moved from 5.3 to 5.7, and that goes along with the Black Cat and the Chinese one. It's really funny to think that now the Hellcat is actually at a higher battle rating than the Tiger, and in my personal take, I don't think it needs to be 5.7. I felt it was fine at 5.3. While they're annoying and still effective at just about any battle rating above 5.3, the tanks that would fight at 5.3 could easily deal with it. The T20 for arcade was moved from 5.3 to 5.7, and for realistic as well, and the T25 for realistic was moved from 5.7 to 6.0. This damages the good 5.7 lineup that the US was having. And the M42 was moved from 6.3 to 6.0 for arcade, and for realistic it was moved from 6.7 to 6.0 as well. Along with that, it was also moved down to rank 4, and the M163 was moved to rank 5. The battle rating changes were also done to the Japanese and Chinese ones, but they were not moved to rank 4. Now this is something that had to be done a long while ago, and I still feel is not enough, because the gun system on this thing is the same on the one on the M19, which is like I think 5.0. So all you get is a different chassis that has similar armor values, and for some reason it was 6.7. Now it's only 6.0, and I still feel that's a little high. I think it should be something like 5.7 to 5.3. Next one down seems to be a bit of a late reaction. The T29 for realistic is being moved from 6.7 to 7.0. Now I haven't heard anyone complain about the T29 in a long while. I feel it to be better than the Tiger 2s, however I don't think it's that great of an advantage, and especially now that 6.7 really just feeding ground for 7.7s, I think the T29 was fine where it was. Final tank for the US was the Merkava Mark I for arcade was moved from 8.7 to 9.0. As for aircraft, the P-36C Hawk was moved only for sim from 2.3 to 2.0. The TBF-1C was moved for realistic from 3.0 to 2.7. The PV-2D was moved from 3.3 to 3.7. The F4U-D1 was moved in arcade from 3.0 to 2.7, and realistic from 3.7 to 3.3, and sim from 3.7 to 3.3. And it also has switched place with the F6 F5. The P51D20NA was moved from 4.7 to 4.3. Amazing how that thing continuously spirals downward. Perhaps I need the battle rating to be as low as the pilots fly it. The Chinese version and the Swedish J26 were also moved down to 4.3. And the B17E late was moved from 5.3 to 5.0. The B17 G60 VE was moved from 5.7 to 5.3. The F86 F35 was moved in arcade from 8.3 to 8.0, and realistic from 9.0 to 8.7. The F86 F25 was in realistic moved from 9.0 to 8.7, and in sim from 9.0 to 8.7. And the last aircraft for the US was actually a helicopter. The UH-1D was moved for both sim and realistic from 9.3 to 9.0. And the only boat for the US to have a battle rating change was the USS Porter, which in both arcade and realistic went from 4.3 to 4.7, which I guess is a shame anyone who was wrecking face with the Porter, because it was the only 4.3 destroyer that had 8 5-inch guns. For Germany, the tanks that got battle rating changes, starting with the Panzer IIIe, was moved from both realistic and arcade 1.7 to 1.3. The Panzer III J1 was moved both for arcade and realistic from 3.0 to 2.7, and the Panzer IIIF was moved for both, once again, realistic and arcade from 2.0 to 1.7. The new German M41 was moved only for realistic from 6.7 to 6.3. The Leo A1A1L44 was moved both for arcade and realistic from 8.7 to 9.0, and the M48A2C was moved for realistic from 7.3 to 7.0. It's really nice to finally see the Leopard A1A1L44 finally move back to 9.0 where it belongs and where it was released at. Never needed to be 8.7. And for their new M41, well, I say it doesn't really matter because I'm gonna take it into 6.7 battles anyways. Although maybe now you could have a nice 6.7 lineup. For German planes, the Finnish H75A2 was moved for arcade from 1.7 to 2.0. The Do 217J1 for realistic was moved from 2.7 to 2.3 and Sim from 3.0 to 2.7. The Do 217J2 for arcade was moved from 3.0 to 2.7, and the Do 217N1 was moved for arcade from 3.7 to 3.3. The JU87G2 was moved down from 3.3 to 3.0 in arcade. The BV238 for realistic was moved from 3.3 to 3.7. About time that thing finally went up a little bit. The ME264 for realistic went from 4.3 to 4.7, and for Sim from 3.3 to 3.7. The German MiG-15 BIS was moved and Sim from 9.0 to 8.7, and both the Bo 105 PHA1 and 1A1 were moved from 9.7 to 9.3. As for boats, the AFD1 was moved both for realistic and arcade from 3.0 to 2.7. For Russia, there's finally some news that I've been anticipating for a while now. The KV2, all versions of it, including the German one, have been moved from 4.3 to 4.0 in arcade and realistic. But that's not all. The KV1S was also moved in realistic and arcade from 4.3 to 4.0. And the KV1 ZIS5 was moved from 4.7 to 4.3. And now me thinking about it, you could have a whole KV lineup. 2 KV2s, KV1S, KV1 ZIS5, and KV1E, all at a 4.3 battle rating. Well, the KV2s are a bit lower. But if only we had a KV Spag of some sort. Final for tanks, not a battle rating change, but the BMP-2 and the Object 906 have switched places. As for planes, only 2 things changed. The I-16 Type 28 for Sim was moved from 3.0 to 2.7, and the I-225 was moved from 6.3 to 6.0 in arcade, from 6.0 to 5.7 in realistic, and from 6.3 to 6.0 and simulator. For all these changes apply both to realistic and arcade. The MBK 161 1943 was moved from 2.3 to 2.7. The MBK 161 1944 was moved from 3.0 to 3.3. The Project 191 was moved from 2.3 to 2.7, and the Groza was moved from 3.7 to 3.3. Britain had very few tank battle range changes. The Vickers MBT was moved from 7.3 to 7.7 for only realistic. The Centurion Mark 10 for arcade was moved from 7.0 to 7.3, and for realistic from 7.3 to 7.7, and the Conqueror also was moved in realistic from 7.3 to 7.7. I find it quite annoying that right when the time when I'm using these vehicles to grind the British tree, they start getting up tiered. However, at the very least, they are all being raised to 7.7, so I don't feel conflicted on what I do want and don't want to bring. But I do miss the days when the Vickers MPT was at 7.0. For planes, the Boomerang Mark 1 and Mark 2 were moved in realistic from 3.3 to 3.0, and in simulator from 3.0 to 2.7. The Firecrest was moved from 4.0 in realistic to 3.7, which it definitely needed. The Viewfighter Mark 21 for realistic was moved from 4.0 to 3.7. The Spitfire F Mark 9C was moved in arcade from 4.3 to 4.7. The Brigand B1 was moved in realistic from 4.7 to 4.3. The Wyvern S4 was moved from 5.0 to 5.3, unfortunately. I love taking that thing out, especially at 5.0. I guess I could live with 5.3, but it kind of ruined some good lineups I had. Both the Scout AH Mark 1 and Wasp AAS Mark 1 were moved from 8.7 to 8.3 in realistic, and the Lynx H Mark 1 and G Lynx were both moved from 9.7 to 10.0. For boats, the battle rating changes apply to both realistic and arcade. The Fairmile D601 was moved from 3.3 to 3.0. The River class was moved from 3.3 to 3.7, and the HMS Hawkins was moved from 5.7 to 5.3. Makes me hope that they're going to add a new heavy cruiser for the British. However, I have an unfortunate feeling that they aren't planning to. Hopefully I'm wrong in that though. For Japan, the Chito was moved in both realistic and arcade from 4.3 to 4.7, which is a terrible decision in my opinion. The tank was quite adequate at 4.3. However, it won't bug me too much as I commonly take it with the Cheeto late anyways, which is already 4.7, so it's kind of the same outcome. The Type 74G was moved in arcade and realistic to 9.0 from 8.7. This one I'm on the fence about as it doesn't have much over its tech tree variant. However, it is still technically functionally better, so it maybe should be 9.0. And for arcade, the Type 16 was moved from 9.3 to 9.0. For planes, the BF109 E7 for simulator and arcade was moved from 2.7 to 3.0. This was not carried out for the German E7 U2 version. For realistic, the G4M1 Betty was moved from 3.0 to 2.7, which was quite interesting because the bomber did quite alright at 3.0 surprisingly. I'd hope that this means that they're making room for other variants of the G4M, however it's unlikely. The Key 109 has been moved from 3.3 to 3.0 and has been moved before the Key 102 Otsu. I need to play that thing more. Well, I need to grind out the stupid belts for it first. The Key 49 2B Late was moved from 4.0 to 3.7, and the Key 76 1 Co was moved from 4.3 to 4.0. The P1Y1 Mod 11 was moved in realistic from 4.7 to 4.3, same with the Chinese one. The J2M5 for arcade was moved from 4.7 to 5.0. The A7M1 for realistic was moved from 4.7 to 5.0. The Key 76 1 Otsu was moved from 4.7 to 4.3. The GAN1 was moved from 6.3 to 6.0 for realistic, which is something that is needed for quite some time. I might say it should go even lower as it has no bombs and only a good defensive armament. The R2Y2 Kai V1 in Sim was moved from 7.3 to 7.0, and the F86F30 for realistic and Sim was moved from 9.0 to 8.7, and along with the Chinese version. As for boats, the Type T38 was moved from 1.3 to 1.7, and the Chi Hugo was moved from 3.7 to 3.3. For China, their only local vehicle that got a battle range change was the Type 69, went from in arcade 8.0 to 8.3. For Italy, the 7532 M41 was moved from 2.7 to 2.3. The 7543 M42 was moved from 3.0 to 2.7, and the 7546 M43 was moved from 4.3 to 4.7. The Centauro Rumor was moved in arcade from 9.3 to 9.0, and the Automatic was moved in both arcade and realistic from 9.7 to 10.0. Because apparently this thing is as good as missile specs, maybe I need to grind more Italy. For their planes, the CR32 BIS was moved across the board from 1.3 to 1.7. Both the G50 Series 2 and the C200 Series 3 was moved from 2.0 to 1.7, along with the German counterpart. The P108A Series 2 was moved in realistic from 3.3 to 3.0, and the Reggiani Re 2005 Series 0 was moved across the board from 5.3 to 6.0. The G91R1 in arcade was moved from 9.0 to 8.7, and the F86K was moved in realistic from 9.0 to 9.3, along with the French one. Speaking of the French, the ARL44 ACL1 was moved both for arcade and realistic from 4.0 to 3.7, making it a very aggressive vehicle, unless you get hit by artillery in the track and die. The AMX50 was moved from 7.0 to 7.3, and the Lorraine 40T was moved from 7.3 to 7.7. I remember this thing was 6.7, man. The AMX30 Super for realistic and arcade was moved from 8.7 to 9.0. The double movement for both game modes make it feel like it wasn't done for balance reasons, was actually done for some other reason, like perhaps adding a higher top tier battle rating. Perhaps that's just my conspiratorial brain getting to me. For planes, the MD4522A, MD4522C, and Alouette 2, as well as the German one, were all moved from 8.7 to 8.3. The Alouette 3 was moved from 9.0 to 8.3. I have no idea why this thing was ever at 9.0. It's functionally the same as the Alouette 2. Anyways, the IAR 316B was also moved from 9.3 to 8.3, and the SA341F Gazelle was moved from 9.7 to 9.3. Finally, Sweden only has 2 tanks, and both of them had their battle rating changed. The SAV J201248 was moved from 3.3 to 3.7 in both realistic and arcade, and I gotta tell you, that's not gonna stop this beast. It needs to be like 4.3 or something. It's stupid good. The SCRV1030 was moved in both game modes from 7.3 to 7.7, which is probably where it should have always been, though I would still prefer if they were to just fix the aiming system so it's not a broken vehicle. For planes, the J20 in Sim went from 2.0 to 1.7, but also switched places with the J22A. Speaking of which, the J22A for realistic and arcade went from 2.0 to 2.3. The J22B went from 2.0 to 2.7 in both realistic and arcade, but in Sim it went from 2.0 to only 2.3. The B18A went from 2.0 to 2.7, and the B18B went from 2.3 to 3.0, both of those in realistic. The J21A1 in arcade went from 3.0 to 3.3, and it's labeled J21A1 again, but I'm assuming it's the J21A2, and arcade went from 3.3 to 3.7. The A21A3 in arcade went also from 3.3 to 3.7. The T18B1 went from 3.7 to 4.0, and the T18B2 went from 3.7 to 4.3. Both the J29D and J29F in arcade went from 8.7 to 9.0, and in Sim went from 8.0 to 8.3. The J32B across the board went from 9.0 to 9.3, and the A32A in arcade went from 9.0 to 8.7. And that is all the battle rating changes. If there was any that I said and I didn't state what game mode it was for realistic, as that is what I play the most, and I assume what my audience also plays the most. Now, there was also a large list of repair cost changes. However, this video is long enough, so I think I'll save those for a secondary video. And believe it or not, that's just about all the news that happened this week. Before I close the video, I'd first like to thank my YouTube members, Durnox TV, Roger Rammer, The Royal Rat, Grimace, I Like Them Thick, Mighty Peppers, Pointless Gunstinks, and Waffly Joker 6. A big thank you to all of them. They get unique Discord roles, emojis during streams, and uploads a little bit early. So if you want to join them, it's $5 a month. All you have to do is hit the join button down below. If you have any comments, concerns, or questions, you can hit me up down below or on my Discord. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, don't hit the like button. If you want to see more, I make Worth Under Weekly news videos every Sunday. I make random reviews throughout the week, and I like to stream on Saturdays. So hit the bell icon to be notified anytime I upload anything. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. In the terms of bonus news, it's highly suspected that devlogs for 1.97 will be showing up sooner or later, so keep your eyes out for those.